See if that's any better on the full screen there, guys. How do I enable the chat? Oh, I think it is enabled. Yeah, it is enabled.
Yeah.
I just gotta wait for them to come back. If you build it, they will come.
Move this over some. Does it still hold it?
Yeah.
So you could see the chat.
Should. It's got a pretty decent grip on it. Sags a little bit. Should be alright. There we go. Alright, good to hear. Glad we're back in business now. Alright. Okay. Much better. Good. Much more gooder.
Just do that for some minutes to dry.
That's what I brought the dry towel for,
Oh,
too. But,
okay.
I mean, yeah, probably should, but that's also why I brought the dry towel out.
Shit, we don't have a blow dryer.
Why do I feel like I've seen one in one of the scenery totes somewhere? Alright, wonder who our third person is that just joined us. Anyway, welcome back to part 3 of live streaming, watching paint dry on the Naptown and White River Model Railroad Club. Are you ready? If you want to let it, does it need to sit?
Pretty dry.
Alright.
I wring that towel out, so.
Yeah, I'll go get it. I'll get you a couple of dry ones to work with. Tonight, what are we planning on doing? Our main goal is getting that board painted. You can see right there, depending on how quickly that paint dries, maybe putting down
New plaster
on that, and then we will paint the plaster. Hopefully it has had plenty of time to set up between tonight and tomorrow, but if not, then we'll have to paint that sometime later in the week. I don't know if you were here, Bryson, when I was showing earlier, but as far as the roundhouse itself, I am not planning on cutting the inspection pits into the layout. If I were to take the camera under, there's just too many cross joists and wiring, both old and new. I don't want to try to risk routing out the pits, the inspection pits for inside of the roundhouse, and then risk hitting something kind of majorly important. So that will be implied with the back of the black paint. But the roundhouse itself, I've got $200 or more in detail parts that will eventually go inside ladders and workbenches. A lot of it came from a place in Madison, Indiana, who 3D prints that kind of stuff. There'll be people, and there'll be lights on the interior. All the tracks will be powered. We're going to put a toggle panel underneath the layout on the back side so that we can turn power on and off to each of the roundhouse tracks. Like I said earlier, there were going to be 9 stalls inside and then 2, possibly 3 tracks outside. They won't be nearly as long. You want a paintbrush? Have a paintbrush. There'll be 2, possibly 3 tracks outside. And then this is the rest of the engine facility for Naptown Yard. I would love to get a slightly bigger coaling tower in there at some point. But we've got coal, we've got water, the diesel shop in the back. I might slip some details into that, and then do some trimming and detailing work, add some more figures, add some yard lights to Naptown Yard. As you can see, pretty decent sized yard. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I kind of enjoy the detailing side. Not super crazy all-out detailing, but I do enjoy the detailing side. Telling a story with some of the stuff that's going on. Now, when we get to a point where we're letting the paint dry here, I might take you over and show you a couple of the other scenes I've done on the layout. But yeah, I mean, like I said, my main goal is to try to do things where people look like they're doing stuff. I got people on ladders, or people at the Coke machine getting a drink, or I built a little farmer's market scene on one of our little country towns around the layout. So you don't have to get too crazy with the details, but just enough to bring the layout to life. I will say I've been a member of the club for 17 years almost. 17, almost 18 years. I joined in 2006 with my dad, so I've run plenty of trains around this layout. I'm ready to move into some of the detailing and the artwork side, something a little bit new and different than running around the same track. The building's 40 foot by 60 foot, but I still pretty much know every tie on this layout now. Just set this right here for a moment. You guys can kind of see some of the toolboxes and workbenches. I am not going to sit there and try to paint every wrench on that wall because you will never see them all, but these are very nicely done 3D prints, and I don't think it's showing all the detail on there, but I mean there's molded tools on some of those cork boards, and we've got 3D printed workbenches or toolboxes in the back. Got some other style workbenches as well. This one's actually got a little drill press on it. There's some of them that have drill presses, and some of them have little pin vices. These were done by RJ Details. They're out of Southern Indiana, out of Madison. He 3D prints them. So I believe the last time before the camera shut down on us, the question was posed, what equipment would you bring back from the annals of history that we've lost? Either lost or hasn't been preserved, or try to keep the camera running, keep the battery charged so we don't shut off in the middle of a conversation on you guys.
Again.
What is my favorite railroad? Too many to choose from. I've always wanted to model the Madison Hill. It's only a short half mile long, 5.89% grade straight up. Around the club, I tend to run a lot of Indiana Railroad equipment, and I've got a fair amount of Monon that has caught up on me over the years.
And I, personally, like, I've always had a fascination with the Pennsylvania Railroad, mainly because my father and his father and his father all worked on it. So it's always been a thing in our family, so it just kind of, I attached to it. And, you know, it's my favorite railroad, with my close second being Union Pacific, because, you know, they have a lot of weird and cool shit.
Yeah, there's a couple of us with the INR DSD 90s. We are definitely waiting on somebody to produce the new 70 Max. Because I think they're Max, the new SD70s that Indiana Railroad just rolled out this year, end of last year. Probably Athern, but wouldn't be against the scale trains doing those. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Shane.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think Shane is watching this, but somebody wants to put a bug in his ear. More Indiana Railroad. Of course, I'm still waiting on the Indiana Railroad SD40-2s from them. They haven't done those yet, and I am bummed, although my wallet is thankful. So you want to get the edge of that too, just to make it look nice.
Edge. Oh, the
Edge.
side.
Yeah. Do you have a big boy or any large HO scale locomotives?
I have a Challenger. I have a T1 Pennsylvania Railroad. And I did have a S2 turbine, but I have recently sold it. And those are my two largest. No, I do have a Lionel HO veranda turbine. So,
Have you run that around this layout? Or is it still sitting in its box?
I think I ran it once when I got it. Otherwise, it's sat in its box.
I remember seeing those when they came out a bunch of years ago. I thought they were really cool because it's an F unit, but it's not an F unit. It's got sidewalk ways on it. And that was really trippy to me as a kid.
Challenger doesn't usually come out unless I want to show off for the kids that are here sometimes. It's got, I've added smoke to it, so when it gets going, it looks like real smokestack steamer. But doesn't smell the greatest, and I usually get complaints.
That's why you get the scented smoke fluids.
Well, with the SUF smoke generator, you have to use the SUF fluid.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
I'm trying to think what the biggest thing I have. I think the biggest engine I still own is probably 484 Northerns. I have let's see, I've got the Broadway, Milwaukee Road, 261, and then a 13-car excursion train I put together, roughly based on her train set. It's not a scale-accurate model, but roughly based on her train set, using Walthers and Rapido cars that I run around this layout. I used to have a Challenger and a big boy I had a big boy years and years ago when Walters did the first set of business cars, but it just didn't get run around the layout very much, so I let it go and kind of regret that. But I did have that. That was before I met Will, so probably wouldn't have done that if I'd known Will at the time. Other than that, the biggest things I tend to run are ST90s and the whatever the GE equivalent is. I'm not great with the GE engines. Scale Trains makes, I think it's an ES44 that I've got in the Wobtec paint scheme that I break out quite a bit. As far as big diesels go, we've been running a lot of, Ryan's been running a lot of his C39s, the C39-8s around the layout the last couple of weeks.
I did have a Broadway Limited Paragon 2 Baldwin Centipede, but it wasn't too much happy with this layout, so it kept, unless it was like loaded with like 50 coal cars, it wasn't happy. Anyways, it wanted to derail and
too many wheels.
Yeah.
Too many wheels.
But I'm starting to hear good things with the Paragon 4 that came out. So I might get one. And the Paragon 4 has the Keep Alive built into it.
Those are always nice.
Yeah.
New Genesis F45s. I haven't been staying up too much on those. The older run, I've seen a few people run the older runs around here, but I haven't paid too much attention to the latest releases. Heard good things about the P42s that just came out, other than supposedly one of them's got a incorrect paint feature, but other than that, they seem to be good, reliable runners.
So it's eBay yelling at me about.
You're watching an M10000 that ends in 14 minutes.
Nah.
I shudder to even ask how much that's going for.
That's more of like, ooh, that's cool. Yeah.
You know, sometimes you get lucky.
And it's listed as DCC ready, but it's a Concord from the 70s.
Is it from the 70s?
The box is the style from the 70s.
Well, that doesn't necessarily. They did a DCC version. I think they did a sound version. Because I know they did DCC and sound versions of the Burlington Zephyr. Apologies to the Burlington fans out there. I just drew a blank on that. Yeah, they must feel like they did enough of those on the last run. The market's still saturated. They can only produce so many models at a time. I mean, heck, the P42s are 2 years late. So I'm sure they'll do another run of those pinstriped or war bonnet in later on down the road. All right, time to let paint dry. We'll take that. The lid. Not sponsored.
Alright. Well, only thing we can do now is watch paint dry, literally. I do not have a layout at home because the basement that I intended to be my layout, my wife decided to put two friends down there that ended poorly and we're no longer friends, so now I have a mess to clean up. And I think Morgan doesn't have a layout because his house is too small, if I'm correct. So Our layout is the club layout.
I do not have a layout at my house. I live in a little apartment, little 366 square foot, kind of a little bit bigger than efficiency. I had hoped to build someday a little 8-foot or 12-foot long switching module, something that would be compatible either with the NMRA standard or the Fremo standard, and then maybe even make it compatible with something the club was doing, but club isn't doing anything else like that right now, and I haven't gotten around to building anything or making the space for that. That might be after this is finished. Yeah, I'd like to see us get something that we can take to shows again. We had a little 4-section. It was 2 foot wide by 16 foot long. Little switching module. It was part of a larger loop at one time that we could just kind of set down at shows and kids could play with for a little bit and get invested into the hobby. A lot of the layouts you see at shows have those velvet rope barriers up, and I understand why. There's a lot of money and a lot of time invested into those portable layouts. You don't want kids getting fingery on them, but the way you get people into the hobby is by actually engaging them, putting a throttle in their hand, letting them run trains back and forth, even if it is only 16 feet long. That's how they got me in as a club member here. That's how we got a lot of our club members in here. Is somebody got to run a train around the layout. That's what we like to do at shows. We tend to be, or were, and Bryson's got a little 4x8. Yeah, 4x8s. A lot of people start with those. You don't need a whole lot to have a good time with. I mean, yeah, it was like just taking something to the show that the kids can get engaged in, because there really aren't a whole lot of those. The CID NMRA has a little switching module, a little Ingle Nook type thing that they have that people can switch on back and forth. But for the most part, you kind of watch a train go by for a few minutes and that's it. So I want something that we can actually engage the public with. That's how you keep the hobby going. Yeah, somebody used that to turn the back of the building, I guess. I don't know. I'm gonna glue these in at some point and then use them to make backdrop. Alright, so while we're letting that dry for a minute, I'm going to unplug the camera from the charger, and we'll just walk over here very slowly so you guys can see the rest of the layout. I think you guys all said you've been down here before. You can see where somebody's been working on the farm scene. You got their flocking material still out. And then I was going to show you guys, and I'm not sure why the lights are off, but this is the other engine facility I did. This is in the LaSalle yard area. LaSalle yard is a much smaller yard. It is a local base, not based on anything in particular necessarily, but thematically kind of the same size as like what the INO has, the Indiana and Ohio has in Greensburg or Shelbyville. We even have a backdrop industry for an auto plant, same as the Honda plant in Greensburg, that would work out of this yard. But it just needed a small engine facility where it could keep 4 or 5 sets of locals and a couple of sets of road power, and maybe keep an engine or two running that needs to refuel. So we built, or I built, this is the interior on a Walthers 2-stall. We had this building here prior to. You can see little shops and lathes and people in there working. And then behind there is a fairly modern style inspection pit area. And like I was saying earlier about, making sure there's actual little scenes going on. I mean, there's somebody in the pit. Obviously, he's got his hands up doing nothing right now, but if I backed an engine over there, he'd be working on the bottom of an engine. You got people standing around talking. And in the engine shop, you got somebody here at the vending machines and shift change going on. And in the back here, we have a signal maintainers area, and you can see them with the cranes out getting ready to load up signal parts onto the flatbed and taken out to work on somewhere out on the railroad. So yeah, just little things we can do to kind of make an otherwise static scene come to life. That's kind of my goal. Put the roof back on the building, and you can see the work area, the little forklift. All of those lights are actually lit. You can turn the lights off on the layout, and you can see the lights at night. I don't necessarily need to, but and then, like I said, you got a little homeless area underneath here where the road was covered over by the railroad. You got a Waffle House, and looks like somebody's turned that section of the layout off, but all of those emergency response vehicles have lights in them. Those were done by East Coast Circuits, I believe. And then that may or may not be the source of the biohazard call-in. Who knows? I'm going to stand this guy back up here. Or just move him. So, well, I gotta reglue a couple of guys there. And then this was the farmer's market I was talking about earlier. You got people going at it here. Live music on the station platform. I don't know why people keep doing those cars like that. I want to do something like that. Let's just do it like that. You can look down the road, and not a whole lot going on in Thomasville right now. Another one of those little lighted vending machines that I was talking about. Yes, the intermodal yard. You are getting slightly ahead of me. There's two right now. This one we built a couple of years ago. Nice, big, and long, but we were talking about possibly putting something else in there. And this peninsula has been going unused. So we are basing this off of the INRD Senate Avenue yard. It will be a slightly compressed down version, but the INRD yard is right there downtown Indianapolis. You can see it right off of 70 as you go by. It's on the opposite side of 70 from Lucas Oil Stadium. And they have a small intermodal facility. They've actually taken some of the intermodal traffic out of Avon Yard off of CSX. They run that in conjunction with Canadian National. And they bring things in from the port of Vancouver directly to Indianapolis. The Chicago Intermodal Terminal is where a lot of containers tend to go to and then get offloaded, and there are so much traffic out of that yard that it bottlenecks. So INRD partnered with CN to bring some of that intermodal traffic that's coming to Indianapolis directly to Indianapolis, and they can unload it and get it to their customers in central and southern Indiana, western Ohio, part of Kentucky, Illinois. They can get those unloaded into them a whole lot faster than Chicago can, just because there's so much less traffic going through there. So, and then off to the back, this is not new, but fairly recent, depending on when the last time you've been down to the club is. We have an auto rack unload facility. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but implies the unloading of auto racks down here. This is the East Bend, Boykin, West Marmon end of the layout. This has been reworked several times since I started as a club member, but we've been taking this into a more modern approach just to give a little more variety with the layout. The club was originally modeling 1959 when I joined in 2006. The club was founded in 1966, so when you figure a 1966 club modeling 1959, that was their modern era at the time. There's so many of us now that have grown up with different railroads than what the layout grew up with when it was first founded, that we just decided to start trying to expand on the era without necessarily taking out what was done before. Kind of in that vein, this abandoned bridge actually is an abandoned bridge. At one time, instead of all of that, there was a module down the middle and you could walk around behind it, and that bridge actually connected to the railroad right there. Oh, hi Ashton, I can see you. Yeah, if you got any questions, like I said, I've been with the club 17 years. I don't know everything, but I can kind of give you an idea of what we've been up to over the last almost 2 decades. I wonder if that's... I hope they're not planning on modeling the station as abandoned. So, Bryson, I can't remember when you said the last time you were down here as, so, or for trackside, you guys can just kind of cruise the layout. Most of this hasn't changed a whole lot in the last 15-20 years. We did expand on the ranger station there in the background 2 years ago now, and that was always a gas station, but we re-expanded on that 2 years ago. Okay, so yeah, you've probably seen most of this then. Still having to reopen the cement plant. Our treasurer has some big plans for modernizing and updating that. He's actually worked around the industry, so he has some big ideas for updating the Portland Cement Company. Little brown bear in the woods. Now we're back up to 5 followers. Yeah, I'm really proud of. I did the work on Possiman, and I'm really proud of how that came out. The sequential lighting, that was fun. That's all just woodland scenic, so it wasn't even all that hard. It's things like this that, like I was saying earlier, about trying to bring scenes to life. Things in the lumberyard being done, you know, trying to imply the day-to-day actually happening. This is another one I did. Not very big, not very intricate industry, but it does the job. Trackside, you might get a kick out of this. I think that light stuck to that building, but put an industry in there, or put details in there. So you actually got interlocking in that tower. One of the things I want to do once we get the roundhouse done is take this street up and get some of the Walter Street running sections and do a 2-track interurban trolley line down the middle of the main drag. This is town Naptown, city of Naptown. Again, loosely based on Indianapolis, not a direct model, more freelance, but
even though it says Indianapolis Post.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's based on the actual Indianapolis Post. It was better than that sign saying East Bend Post Office. When Ray was alive, he was talking about a system that was not DCC, but would basically function like a pre-programmed DCC, and these trolleys could actually move up and down and would stop periodically like they were picking people up. I don't know if I'm going to try to pick that up where he left off, or if I'm just going to do the end-to-end bounce, or I might just leave it as a static model, just because that's one less thing to have to maintain. But I would love to base some things off of the Indianapolis Street Railway. I worked with a couple of guys who founded the Hoosier Heritage Hoosier Heritage Trolley I apologize to them. I'm dropping their name tonight. But they rescued some of the interurban cars and the Indianapolis streetcar out of Noblesville when ITM folded. And I would love to get one or two things on this layout in their honor, just because they've been doing such a bang-up job with something that was never going to be restored at ITM. There just wasn't the time, there wasn't the manpower. And they've taken leaps and bounds in getting the first of those 4 cars back up to a point of being operational. Now they've tested the motor, and that thing is actually able to run on its own power. Can't go very far because I don't have a catenary for it yet, but it does work. So good to that. Good for them. Good on that. I would love to get a car down on the layout in their name.
I forget to mention your hotel with the lights.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess I could have just dropped the camera here and let you watch the hotel room light sequences. There's 16 sets of lights in that hotel. The first floor stays on all the time. There's 2 suites that light up, and then 8 or 10, I can't remember how many rooms I did in the actual building, but they sit there and they cycle every few seconds. See the lights show up a little bit better. Again, those are all Woodland Scenics, just plug lighting kit. So it is literally plug and play. The hotel rooms are just printouts that I folded into shadow boxes and stuck inside the building. The first floor does have some 3D details for the restaurant, and I have some details to go into the little boutique store in the other corner, but I will be doing that not anytime soon because of just how much wiring is currently holding that building to the layout. Once we take the street up, if I ever take the street up to work on that, is when I will stick the rest of those details in that building, but I don't want to pull that building up too many times and then risk pulling a wire out. Another project, I may work on this a little bit tonight too, but extending this backdrop. This was another project that Ray was working on before he passed away. Painted the backdrop buildings in the distance. I mean, you can see, based on what's been finished here, and what you can see a little bit down the way there at Benning on the background, what it would look like when it's done. But right now, without the rest of the buildings in the way, it just kind of looks like a city in the sky. So I want to work on that some more this year. Try to get that wrapped up, finished up. at least brought around to where he finished. I might take it on further down.
Don't forget the tri-motor.
Yeah. Any airplane enthusiasts? Looks like we got some patchwork we need to do here too. Let's sweep that up and do some scenery work tonight. Well, while you let that dry, you want to run some trains?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll run tonight or not. I might. We're thinking while we let paint dry, we might break out some trains. Run around the layout. Otherwise, all work and no play. Yeah. I'm gonna let the camera sit right there on the layout for a little while we get our engines running. Maybe I have a couple of issues fixed on the Amtrak postal. I don't know if any of you guys have been outside recently, but it's cold. And flying camera. Train I am putting out is a Amtrak Mail and Express train. Consist is based on the Three Rivers. I've been having coupler issues with the Am Cafe and the Horizon coaches not wanting to play right. So I was hoping maybe I finally got that tightened up. And then Will is working on replacing a couple of couplers on the Walthers Pennsylvania Railroad. Is that General? The General, which was a secondary flagship passenger train. Another mail carrier as well. Yeah. Sit down. Well, that's a promising sign. And depending on how this does, I'll either break out the dinner bell afterwards, or I've been wanting to break out my Indiana Railroad business training. I haven't done that for a while. I might have some out in my toolbox if you need.
There they are.
Where are you? There we go. Nope. Oh, it's the floor sagging. That's why you're not locking it all the way. You're not getting full travel. Okay, I didn't know that detail mattered. Turn this around. Silly goober. And what are we running tonight? Mostly our mouths. Thank you, folks. I'll be here all night. Try the veal. Yeah, well, we lost two of them anyway. We'll go back to working on the roundhouse a little bit later, most likely. Just waiting on paint to dry. Figured we go ahead and enjoy the fruits of our club layout while we wait for the work. Oh, I'm full of useless answers. Maybe I can answer your question. Only wants to go around the left corners. If it is on a right turn, it pops off the track.
Wheel spacing?
Yeah, that's my first thought too. Something on the, but that.
Check to see if the trucks are incorrectly.
484 Northern, so
Yeah,
steam
Northern.
locomotive. So,
is it the front pilot truck?
Is it the pilot truck, or is it losing the drivers?
Or the trailing truck?
Or the trailer under the cab?
Because if it's the pilot truck, I know how to fix that problem.
Also, who was the make on that engine?
Guarantee you it's a Bachmann.
That's my guess too. It's a BLI Paragon 2.
Wow. Is it the drive wheels, the pilot?
Is it the drive wheels? Is it the pilot or the trailing truck? You just made me feel old.
What did he say?
He said it's a year older than he is.
Yeah.
So with the Bachmann, what did you have to do?
Well, if it's a pilot, what I did was I unscrewed the truck and I put a washer underneath the screw to hold it down against the spring, or so the spring holds the washer down, which holds the truck down, which keeps it from bouncing up.
Yeah. He says it's mainly the driver, but sometimes the trailing truck. In that case, my guess is probably it's the drivers, and the trailing truck is just following the engine off the track. It would be a lot easier to diagnose in person, probably.
Yes.
But if it's the drivers, my first thought is make sure your drivers are in quarter.
Yes.
So if you look on the drivers on a steam locomotive, if the left side driver is straight up at midnight, the right side on the same drive wheel should be at the 3 o'clock position, I believe.
I thought they were completely opposite.
No, that's why it's called quartering. It should be staggered off. I would first make sure. Nope, he did say 90 degree. 90 degree offset. Yes. I would make sure that is fully accurate. The second thing is then I would very carefully flip the engine over onto its top and take the panel off the bottom of the engine. Now be very careful when you do this. I had to do this to a BLI, a Paragon 3 Northern. I believe the Paragon 2 has the same setup. There is a metal bracket around the axle of the drive wheel that transfers power into the chassis, and then up to the decoder, up to the motor. And on the Paragon 3, at least, there is a tiny little spring underneath that in the frame itself. It looks like a KD coupler spring, to give you an idea about how small it is. It's a little bit stiffer than a KD, but it's about the same size. If your drivers are in quarter, my other suspicion would be to make sure that you've got plenty of lateral play, plenty of side-to-side play in that driver hold frame. Now, if not set up the same way as my Northern was, you may have a little bit different setup just because of the age of the locomotive, but I would imagine that it uses pretty much the same principle. I would make sure that those springs are in all the way nice and tight, and that the axle can slide left to right in that bracket. That bracket may actually have come loose within the frame and may not be letting the axle slide the way it's supposed to. That's real strange that it's only letting it do it on the left side, but to me that sounds like either a quartering issue or a side-to-side play issue. Now, not all of those axles will be sprung, so if you flip it over and you find out that your second and third axle or your second and fourth axle don't have springs on them, I would not immediately panic unless there is a spring on the left side and not on the right side. Don't put springs into every one of them. That engine will bounce up and down like a waterbed. I made that mistake. But I would make sure that those springs are properly seated, that bracket is properly seated, and then be very careful putting that engine back together, or you will have to re-quarter your drivers like we were just talking about. But I would double check on those two things first. Unfortunately, since you guys are in the Terre Haute area, there's not a hobby shop nearby. But if you're ever out this way on a Monday or something, you might bring that engine with you. We might be able to see if we can reproduce the problem on our layout. No guarantees, but you might try it on our layout sometime, see if we can figure out what it's doing. We'd certainly probably be willing to help. Well, if it's a cracked gear, then that certainly would also explain what I was talking about. If it's a cracked gear, you would have to see if you can get a driver from Broadway Limited, because I imagine you are outside of the warranty period. I don't know if they would repair an engine without charging you a pretty significant amount of money, but if like $90, maybe it's not as much anymore. But the good news is most of those Paragon 2, Paragon 3, Paragon 4 use the same drivers between the same engine. A Paragon 2, 280 or 484 for whatever railroad released with a Paragon 3 is going to probably have the same drivers, so you can probably still get parts for that engine from one of the newer runs. Possibly, maybe. You'd have to do the work yourself that way, but it'd probably be cheaper. Otherwise, see if Broadway would do the repair work. They do have a good repair department. It just may be pricier. Well, yeah, but part of that's shipping.
No. Mine arrived in 2 days and sat for 4 months.
Oh. You know, they don't have a big repair department. They have a repair department. They just have like 2 guys.
I found the steam engine cleaner online. It's actually pretty nice.
Yeah?
But that is expensive. It's like $150.
Who makes it?
It's a... I don't know the brand name. It's not like normal brand. It's actually kind of a... It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen like those roller.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this one's like been supersized, so you can put the whole steam engine on.
Yeah.
And then it has like rollers that are cleaners that you can put in between the wheels that. So, which is why I can't run my T1 because it's dirty and. You know, I don't have a real good way of cleaning the wheels.
Yeah. Yep, I've done that with reversing the tender truck before. It's an easy mistake to make.
Leads on the tender.
Yeah, or the tender truck just spins 180 degrees around, so it's drawn.
Yeah,
Normally, there's not that much slack on the wire leads, but I've run into that once or twice. Where is 400? Might be out on the way out. 400. Yeah, that's it. Oh, nope, it's sitting right there.
Oh. R1 F40.
Yeah. The one F40 that means I don't have to buy an F40.
Don't forget candy.
That is an Atlas -8, 232-8, and a Tsunami 2 decoder, I believe I put in that.